Hello and welcome, everyone. We are happy that we are recording from Sonrise Christian Center to you. And we decided that we needed to get together and help all you parents out there that are now homeschooling. And so we have a panel of expert homeschool mamas, and we've been doing this for a while. And I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Pastor Grace Hammer, and I have 4 kids, and the ages are, let's see, what are they? I have to do this every single time. Okay, 9, 10, 12, and 14. And I've been homeschooling since they were just, first starting school. And we've been through a series of schools. But, so that's me. And
okay,
go ahead.
I am Pastor Tara Johnson, and I have been homeschooling my kids let me tell you how many kids I have first. I have three daughters. Madison, who is 18, Clara is 13, and Phoebe's 11. I don't know why that's so hard. It's hard, apparently. And I have been homeschooling Madison since she went into 8th grade, and then Clara and Phoebe both in the last couple of years. We did public school for a number of years and switched to homeschooling because it fit our family better. What's really great is Madison, we just found out, got accepted to the University of Washington in Seattle campus.
Yay,
so we're excited about that.
Congratulations to Maddie.
Congrats, Maddie.
Yeah.
So just so that you kind of know a little bit of our background for where we're coming from when we're talking about homeschooling.
Right.
And then this is our expert witness here.
Expert, yes.
Expert.
She trained us.
She did.
Yeah, but then they went to new levels.
Praise the Lord.
I'm Esther Wright, and I have 5 kids, and their ages are 18, 17, 15, 11, and 8.
Yes.
She's better at
And
it.
I got practice. It was a run-through. And I've homeschooled since the very beginning. My kids don't know what any other school is like. And they do wonderful. And bragging on my oldest, he is number 2 in the nation right now for debate. So we're very proud of Taylor.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And a senior this year, our first graduate.
Yay.
And I love homeschooling. It's the best thing, one of the best decisions I've ever made for my family. And I can't imagine doing anything else.
Yes. And I'm so excited that people get to kind of enter in my world a little bit. These are 2 of my favorite people to hang out with. So much fun. So I hope you guys enjoy this. And I hope it's helpful to you as well.
Yes.
And it relieves some of the stress. We're here to help you relieve stress and panic, because you know what, this is look at it as a blessing, a time that you can sow into your kids and mold them and train them, and it's going to be really beneficial. I really feel like it is.
And we're coming from a lot of different perspectives too. I mean, many of you know I work full-time, and I work full-time and homeschool my children. And so for those of you out there who are just kind of wondering, how do you balance everything?
Right.
We want to address some of those concerns and kind of help you get through this next, season with your kids. You found yourself all of a sudden being a teacher when you really maybe had not ever thought that would be where you wanted to go. And maybe you think all of us homeschool moms are crazy, and we are a little bit.
Just a tad.
But we want to come and give you some helpful hints and tips. And we are going to, at the end, we'll share how you can private message us. If you guys have personal questions, we're happy to answer those. And then we're also going to leave some resources that we'll talk about throughout the little video here in the comments, so that you guys can get some information in your fingertips fast. And we wanted to make sure that we responded to this quickly. We know that a few schools started online learning or at-home learning last week, but then the majority of schools started yesterday in full swing. And I know Esther or Grace and I have been talking about all the people who have been messaging us, and I'm sure Esther too. What do I even do? How do I do this? So that's just kind of where we want to start, I think, right, Grace? You want to start us?
Yeah. So my first question is, what do I do now? My kids are at home. I have materials. So what does this look like? For how do I even start? Where do I start? What do you think, Esther? You want to start us off?
You want to start off? Well, I would say that everything's going to be okay.
Amen. That's a good start.
And You can teach your children, and you love your children, so you are the best teacher for them during this time. Even if it's for a certain short period of time, it is a time that we have the privilege of teaching them for a short amount of time. And you can do this. So we were talking earlier amongst ourselves about schedules, I guess.
Yeah.
And you have kids that are used to 9 to 3 schedules,
Right.
for the most part. And so the first thing I would do is keep your kids on a schedule. But my, I guess, caveat to that is when you're in a public school or private school, you have way more students.
Right.
So the teacher can only get so much done with that amount of students. Now, most likely you do not have 30 children. So
That's against the rules.
yeah, and it's even you're not supposed
that's
to
not safe social distancing.
So that being said, in homeschooling, one of the advantages is we can get a lot more done in a short amount of time.
Right.
So it's like hiring a private tutor. If it's one-on-one with that tutor, they can get a lot more packed in a couple hours than with 30 kids for 7 hours.
Oh.
Right.
So it's good to keep the kids on a schedule, but especially for the elementary age, I would recommend, you're good with 3 hours, 2 to 3 hours of stuff, and your high schoolers can do more, and you can still keep your kids busy with fun activities, which we'll be talking about, but the actual learning stuff can be a lot more compact.
Yeah.
Right.
Esther, tell them a little bit about your background in that, how you started in education.
So I actually have a degree in education. I was a public school teacher, and so I have the perspective of what that's like to have. I taught first grade, and my student teaching was in 3rd and 4th grade, and my degree is K through 8 elementary education and K through 12 music. And so I had the experience of what it was like to have 26 precious first graders, and I loved that job. But believe me, in the 1 year of, in 1 year, all the stuff that I could get done, I didn't get to everything. And it was just because it was problematic with that amount of kids.
Right.
So when I went to homeschooling, I always knew I was going to homeschool my kids and put my career aside for that period of time, as long as however many kids I had and homeschooled. It was so different, so vastly different, because I could get so much more done in a small amount of time.
Right.
I think the other thing to remember in that is, your kids best.
Yes.
You maybe haven't taught them before, but you really do know them best, and
Right.
you
Yes.
understand how their little brains work, or their big brains if they're in high school or middle school. You really do know them best, and to trust that instinct of what they can handle, where they're going, how they're learning, when they need a break. You got to trust your instinct on that.
That's true. That's good.
Rely on God for that. God's going to get you through that. I think all three of us would agree that we start the day with Jesus.
Yes.
And helping your kids starting the day with Jesus. I know our number one thing in the day on the kids' schedule is they get Bible, breakfast, and ready. So they get
That's
their
right.
they get their Bible first. They get out and they do their devotions. They do their prayer. They eat their breakfast, and they just get started on the right foot.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah.
And also, I feel like when I first started homeschooling, when my little first born, Haley, was just little, I was always kind of had this pressure on me, like, they're gonna be held behind, they're gonna get, I'm not teaching them enough, or, I just had that pressure. And I feel like it was from, the way our school system's laid out, that you have to have this many hours to feel like you've actually accomplished something. But I like how, Esther, you were saying that you don't need as long, and you don't need to worry that your kids are actually going to blossom and flourish through the time that you spend with them one-on-one. When I went through public school with the kids as well. We had them during 3rd grade. And I felt like I was doing homeschool and sending them to public school because we had so much school we were doing at home with them as well as that sending them to school. So I was like, well, if this is, I should just be homeschooling them because I'm actually teaching them while they come home with their homework.
Yeah.
But so just don't stress so much and feel like your kids, oh my goodness, they're going to be so behind in school, because I feel like this time that you pour into them is going to actually just kind of sustain them or even teach them more than what they've been learning.
Yeah.
They're going to gain so much more.
Absolutely.
I actually have a really great resource that I would recommend to all parents, regardless of what schooling. Right now we're doing homeschooling, but regardless of what schooling, it's called Teaching from Rest by Sarah McKenzie. And what's awesome about it, it's a very small book. So if you're a busy mama, it's very small. Mm-hmm. In fact, I highly recommend the Audible because it's read by the author and it's very well done, a Christian author. But she has such a way of changing your perspective on teaching from rest and what that looks like. Mm-hmm. And I would, even when you send your kids back to school, I would recommend this resource for any parent.
As far as schedule goes, too, for those of you who are working, maybe you're working a job where you're not in the home and somebody else is caring for your children, or maybe you are working in the home. For me, with my kids, I every week do just kind of an evening planning session where I sit down and I write out their schedules, and they have an hour for each subject that they do. And like Esther was saying before, they're going to get that work done a lot faster. So then we have a lot of resources that we'll put in here also. So like during math time, they finish their math assignment, which usually takes them anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes, depending on what the complexity of the math is. Mm-hmm. Phoebe, who's a little bit younger, can get through it a little bit faster if it's, something that she's familiar with, or if she's learning a new concept, it might take her a little bit longer, and she has videos that she watches and such. But then after that's done, there's a great app called Operation Math, and it's actually like a 007 kind of challenge game where they go on and they do math facts. And so it's like plus, minus, division, multiplication. And so then they just get better answering those math facts in that time that's left. So they get a little bit of fun in there, but they're still learning and they're still using that. And so I would say also to not be afraid of utilizing screens during this time frame for good and not evil, Really, it's going to take a little bit more prep and planning on your part as a mom, or dad. I know there's a fair few dads actually out there. Shout out to Spook. Right. He's carrying the torch. So there's dads and moms out there who are it's going to take a little bit more planning, a little bit more involvement. Don't be afraid to utilize those screens for good. I love, Esther, why don't you talk a little bit about what you do for reading time?
Oh, yes.
I was just going to ask about that.
Good. Okay. I just took over there for a second. Sorry, because I was just thinking. I didn't want to talk about
excited.
I get so excited. So excited.
Are you talking about my morning time?
Your morning time, but also what you do with your big kids and little kids.
Oh, for the free
your
reading.
Age groups. Yeah, for your free reading.
Okay, so I have two things that I do when it comes to reading. The first thing I do, which gives mama a break. And if you're a book nerd like me, I use it to read.
Or dad.
Or
those
dads. Mom or dad. Sorry. Yeah, help me keep me in that loop. Actually, our dad helped homeschool Grace and I.
Yeah.
So it was mom and dad.
He helps homeschool our children. What are you talking about?
I know he does. He does apologetics for us.
And woodshop.
Yeah. So he's still doing it.
Yeah.
Where was I? Oh, free reading. So free reading time every day is 30 minutes. Well, for my kids, it's an hour, but I've been doing it for a long time. So you can start with 30 minutes. And the reason I say start with 30 minutes is because if your kids aren't used to reading alone for 30 minutes, an hour might seem overwhelming.
Well, actually, public schools require them to read about 30 to an hour.
To an hour. Yeah, so you can set 30 minutes or an hour. I do an hour because I want a longer break.
Oh, okay. Do an hour.
Do an hour. Get your coffee.
So it's usually for...
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Sorry.
So it's usually for after lunch works really well.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And they go and they just know it's just kind of a routine thing. And we read for an hour.
Yeah.
And then my little ones that couldn't read, when we would do that and they had a hard time reading, Audible works are genius. Audible works. I'm saying that wrong. Audible books are genius.
You said that very wrong.
Yes, I did. Audible works. That's okay. Whatever.
I mean, Audible does work. So
it does work.
Audible
That's
works.
why my brain just did
Maybe
that.
it's a new app that we should come
Okay,
up with.
Right.
maybe we could stop pointing out that I did that.
Oh,
Okay.
but also if you don't have a bunch of money, a lot of extra money, or people are concerned about spending money, the public library has an app, Overdrive or
Yes.
Libby.
Libby. I use the Libby app all the time.
I use the Libby app. Oh, either one. And you can listen to audiobooks right on there. My kids know how to go on there and find all their
And it's
books.
free.
And it's
Esther,
free.
Maybe you can, because you've studied this. Well, I've watched some YouTube
creating
teachings on this also.
creating
but
great communicators.
The importance of audios.
Yeah.
And not just listening to audiobooks, but the importance of reading to your children.
Right.
If you have time to do that as well. Can you?
Yes. The best thing you can do is to read aloud to your kids. And if to add that, you can also use Audible books. Like if that scares you a little bit, you're like, I'm not a read aloud person. You can use Audible books. But they've done studies, and it creates better writers and better communicators. And the reason for that, in the simplest way to put it, because it's a big, long research thing.
We could do a whole podcast on that.
We
right?
could.
Maybe we should.
Maybe we will.
It's like my favorite thing. But it's that we have certain patterns in our brains, and if we don't have the information in our brains to get it on paper in the first place, then our kids, when they write, they don't have as much to write.
Right.
But what we're doing when we read aloud to them is we're creating sophisticated patterns of language in their brains. And when they have those sophisticated patterns of language, it helps them become better writers because they have it already. If we're reading to them, because you can comprehend, the comprehension level of kids is much higher that you can read aloud to them versus their own reading level. Like, it's important for them to practice fluency in reading, but the read aloud part you can do at the higher level. Like I have 5 children, and my youngest is 8, my oldest is 18. What I do is I cater to the high schoolers when I read. So you better believe my 8-year-old is getting a lot of sophisticated pattern language in his brain.
Right.
He'll probably end up being my best writer. But it's the best thing you can do, but not just for that. When you read aloud as the mom or the dad, and you take that time, and it doesn't have to be a lot of time. Start with 15 minutes a day. Start with 10 minutes a day. It creates connection. It's kind of like almost like watching movies together, right? You end up developing a language. You'll inside jokes and everything. Well, that can also be with books. You start a really good series, which I've done with my kids, because over the years, if you keep doing this, even if it's 15 minutes a day, what ends up happening is we'll be making dinner and someone makes a reference to a book and we all start laughing and we're like, oh my goodness, we're creating our own little culture, a book culture. And creating that book culture, it's just that time together. It's more valuable than even the sophisticated learning patterns, but that's the benefit of it. So the best thing you can do during this time when you're all of a sudden homeschooling, read to your kids.
Yes.
Even though they should have separate times reading also with that free reading time, it's really important that you read to your kids. One of our favorite series that we did that from 8 years old to 18, they love it, is Wingfeather Saga. It's a fiction, it's fantasy, and it's written by a Christian author, Andrew Peterson. It's still my kids' favorite, even though we have read other series by now. But that's a suggestion. There's a lot of series that I know that you could message me, or I'm going to give my blog out. My blog is homeschooladventure.org, and it's a great resource for what we're talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I've written on it for 3 or 4 years, and I thought of these questions that you might have, and I put them there, and so there's some resources for you that's concrete that you can see. So if I mention something, it's probably on my blog if I'm saying it, and for you to go check that out.
The other thing I want to add to just what Esther's saying with the reading aloud to your kids is if you have kids that are struggling with reading, we had one of ours that really struggled with reading, and she really took a turn when I finally incorporated audiobooks along with what she was reading.
Yes.
And
That's
so
really good.
when she was, whatever book that she was reading, I would add also in, she'd had to listen and follow along in her with
That's
the
good.
audiobook.
Yeah, that's really good.
And it really helped. And it took the pressure off of me getting frustrated with her learning and getting frustrated with that. So that's the other part that I would even encourage you, like kind of in this time is your kids may be struggling with things that maybe you didn't realize they were struggling because they've been at school and maybe you just, didn't know. And you're going to get to see some areas where your kids are struggling and also where they're going to shine. And we're hoping that you guys will ask us questions. We've got lots of tools and resources for to help with those areas that they are struggling. But that's one of the kind of testimonies that I would say to what Esther's talking about is really my kid who was struggling with reading. Yeah. Once I incorporated that audiobook along with the text, she's not even afraid now to read much higher than her own reading level necessarily, because she knows she can figure it out. So it's bolstered her confidence too. I think that's something I'm excited to see kind of in the coming weeks with kids is their confidence being boosted.
Yes.
There's a lot of pressure in schools when kids are surrounded by other kids learning and doing things that maybe they feel pressure about. And that's the joy of homeschooling, is it removes that in a lot of ways, because they're really just focused on, their own learning and their own pace.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah.
What was that YouTube? You know what really helped me is to watch that YouTube kind of teaching. Do you remember?
It was creating, I believe it was Creating Competent Communicators, and it's by Andrew Pudawa.
Yeah.
And it is free on YouTube. You can watch it. It's about an hour and a half, but it's so worth it.
So worth it.
I told Grace to watch it. She watched it, and all of a sudden her perspective was changed on reading aloud.
Amazing. And it was like, he said the most important thing you can do if everything else fails, math, they're not like having it that day, whatever, their English lesson, read out loud, audios, because that's going to develop their brain in ways that those other things can't touch. And it's just amazing. So go to check that out on YouTube, because it's really beneficial. I think as a parent.
Yeah. And he's a really entertaining, I think it wasn't a boring video. It was really interesting.
And it's one of those things I like to put things on while I do dishes or laundry or things like that.
That's what I did. I got more cleaning done because I just put in my AirPods.
If you're running on the treadmill, just put it on.
Yeah.
That's another thing. So another question I've had recently come to my attention is you have multiple kids of various levels. So what can you do with the young little ones that maybe they're not even in school, maybe they're just like in childcare? What can you do to occupy them during the time that you have to teach the older kids and get things done? What have you guys learned?
Well, one thing I did was arrange the schedule a little different, because you can do things in the compact time, like what we talked about, is you can schedule it around the toddler's nap time. The other thing I did is I had a special box during the time I really wanted to teach my olders, that I would bring it out of fun stuff just for the toddler just during that time. And so when they wanted to play with, when I wanted to read or do a math lesson and I needed the toddler not to be destroying things, then I would bring out that little box, and they would think it was the best thing in the world, because it only came out when I had a schedule in that one time.
Right.
And those were the best things I did for toddlers, but also knowing that there is a season for everything, and have grace for yourself.
Yes, that's
when
important.
you have toddlers and babies, and don't sweat the small stuff.
Right? Don't sweat the small stuff.
Tara was saying that earlier to us. Yep. It's okay. It's okay if it ends up being a day that's a mess and you didn't get anything done. Your kids will be awesome, and you have the next day. It's okay.
Yep.
If the only thing you got done was, I read to my kids for 10 minutes. Yay, victory.
You got it.
So those were some of my days. That's being blessed in the mess. I mean,
And I would
it's
call
just
these two whenever I had those days. I'd be like, I just didn't feel like anything.
and we would say, "You're amazing."
Same. Call Esther and be
also-
like, they won't do anything. They won't listen to me at all.
They will graduate. They will learn.
It brings up another point really quickly, because I know we're running out of time, but is it's character building.
It is character building.
And that's another thing that you instill into your kids is just life skills and how to live life and how to deal with people and how not to, stress out or lose it over a little math problem, and how God can help them. And
Well, and something we were talking about kind of earlier too is bringing your kids along with the day-to-day stuff. So remember that, like, having your kid prepare dinner is home ec.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Doing laundry and different things like that. I mean, they
Life
can
skills.
do life skills.
Yeah.
That's such an important, valuable thing that maybe you don't on a day-to-day basis get to bring them in on. But measuring out things is math. And remember the little things every day that you're incorporating in around. Have them read labels to you. Different things like that you can really incorporate. And I know we kind of focused a little bit on kind of the smallers. But Esther, you had some really great questions for high schoolers,
yeah.
because I know we really don't have very much time left.
Yeah. So high schoolers, the other question I sometimes get is, what do I do with my high schoolers? The thing to do with the high schoolers, a couple resources real quick, AmblesideOnline.com and Sunlight.com. Now, AmblesideOnline.com is a free curriculum. You can click on the year, so you could click on the high schoolers, and what it does is it has a list of books that would be appropriate for that age. So if they're studying American history, whatever. Sunlight, same thing. You could see the suggestions for books. I'm not really saying buy the stuff. I'm just saying get suggestions.
Yeah.
So this goes into what I'm going to say. So let's say your high schooler is studying American history. My daughter's studying American history. She's in 9th grade. When she reads a book, so she comes and first has to tell me what it's about. But you as the parent don't have to read the books.
Amen.
Which is hallelujah. Now, I kind of want to read the books, but that's just me.
Yeah.
But I don't. I don't
wish I
have
had
time. I don't have time to
We
read
don't
all the
have
books
time. There's no
in
time.
reality. So there are some questions that you can ask the kids. And one of my favorite questions that I ask the kids is, who was the most courageous in that book? Who was the most cowardly? Or would you agree with what that person did? These kind of questions are not yes and no. And what that helps is you really know if they read the book. And you start great conversations.
Yep.
So with high schoolers, the most important thing probably during this time, in my opinion, would be having them read things and starting great conversations with them.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that can lead to other things. Another important thing in the Christian realm that we're in is studying apologetics with them. Take this opportunity to, I walked my kids recently through the book Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis. Phenomenal book. But it is more of a book that you'd want to read aloud because it's a tough book. But the reason I wanted to read it aloud, my kids could have read it on their own, being 17, 18, and 15. But it created conversations.
Yep.
It created discussions about discipleship things that would have never come up otherwise. So, and you can use other books. There's lots of apologetic books. You can message us for suggestions. You know, we can give you suggestions. I have a whole library. I love apologetics suggestions. But those are the kind of things you can do with the high schoolers.
YouTube is your friend too. YouTube is your friend. I do a lot of, or I did a lot with my older daughter, a lot of YouTube videos. So again, she had to read certain things, but then we would have, like, if she was reading about, U.S. history or whatever, then I would find U.S. history videos to go along with that, just to change up the atmosphere and the learning that was going on. So that way it wasn't always like, oh, go read this book, or oh, go watch this video, that she was getting a little bit of both. Yeah. And I think that really helped break up the day too. I think the other thing that really helps is get them up and get them moving.
Oh, yeah.
Get them outside.
Actually, it's really important during this time fighting this virus is to be outside as much as you can.
I have my kids, I send them outside.
It's actually more beneficial than staying inside. So, have them take breaks, go outside, weed,
Yeah. Weed.
I think the one thing I wanted to encourage all of you parents is that our goal in life with these kids is to develop lifelong learners.
Yes.
Lovers of Jesus
Yes.
Yep.
and lifelong learners.
Yep.
And so when we look at we feel anxious about their education, try to keep in mind that all this is learning. Whatever it's a feast. It's this feast that you get to pick from. You get to decide what you want to teach your kids. And out of it, we're developing lifelong learners. And so this is just a short time that you're going to be with your kids for some of you. And it's an opportunity to just instill in them a love of learning.
So really quick to wrap it up, I thought we could share some creative activities that would help increase learning with the kids and make it a family fun thing. There are games we could play, like, Monopoly or Clue or gestures or, guessing games. There's also some speech and debate games. For those of you who don't know, speech and debate is, a club where they work on speeches and debates. And they go and have contests and things like that. But there are some practical little games that we could play with them that the kids would find enjoying, and it would increase their speaking skills. So
We do a lot of impromptu at home, which is basically the kids, I will create or I'll pull offline. I'll just go to an impromptu generator.
You can just type in impromptu.
Yeah,
and
you just Google
for kids.
impromptu for kids and, pull them up, and then they'll get a word. So like maybe it's dog. So then they have, a few minutes. We usually give them about 4 minutes to prepare as long as they can talk to about a dog.
And then you time them, right?
And then you time them.
how
Yep,
long
you
they
time
can
them and
take.
see how long they can take. And oh my goodness, you would be so surprised. Sometimes if it's a topic they're really inspired about, they'll just talk and talk and talk. And then other times, they're done really fast. But it all improves learning.
It does. I give them a 5-minute limit because I have talkers.
Yeah,
I
you do.
can't.
Okay,
I'm just
we can't stay all day
You
here.
have up to 5 minutes because otherwise they'll do impromptu for like 10 minutes. I'm like, no,
Yeah.
we can't do this.
No.
Is there another game that you guys like to play, Esther?
Well, we do the impromptu for speech.
Yeah, I feel like the impromptu is the best one.
Because the other ones are associated with speech and debate.
Yeah,
There's
more specific.
also, for me, it's not for speech, it's for acting.
Oh, yeah.
So you would pick up something and then it says like, building a house. And so then you build a house and they go, what are you doing? And then the person says, and they give a suggestion, like I'm rowing a boat. And so then that person jumps in and has to row a boat.
Yeah,
And they go,
I
what are
remember
you
doing
doing? So
Yeah.
it's kind of like an interactive, like creative, impromptu, theatrical game. Because I'm more of the theater nerd. So.
Yeah. Well, no, and it's good just to get them moving and get them thinking about different things. Don't be afraid to pull out board games like Pastor Grace was saying, Monopoly, Clue, all those games, Catan. They stimulate learning, whether you realize it or not, in a fun way.
Yes.
And I think those are the things that we forget as we kind of move on with life is we just think learning is opening up the math book and doing the answers to the math questions or doing the science questions. Remember to get outside. And Esther had a great tip for which we implemented in our family as we go on nature walks. And whatever the kids would find, they would draw it in their journal. And then when they got back, they would Google and look up about whatever that was. So they're just great ways to incorporate maybe. And I know there's a variety, like some people got a lot of curriculums at home if they were private schooled and they have certain stringent things. And for those of you guys, maybe your takeaway is how to create kind of that learning atmosphere. And maybe you put them in a schedule and realize that, they're going to get that work done pretty quickly. But hey, at the end of the day, they don't have homework to bring home, right?
Right. There you go.
There you go. And then for those of you who maybe got sent home and really you don't have anything, we're going to have some great resources for you.
Yeah, we'll have them online. And, another game, just real quick, is I give a topic to the kids and they have to write out a story.
Yeah.
And then they share with us what their story is. And for some reason,
great.
they love, I don't know, my kids anyways, love standing up and sharing what they wrote because they think it's hilarious and they want everyone to hear it. So, well, hopefully this helps you guys a little bit out there, all the homeschool moms and dads. And I think thank you, Esther, our expert, coming and
Yes.
You're
helping
welcome.
us talk.
Absolutely.
You're welcome.
And so, yeah, we're just praying for you. Send us, like we said, send us questions,
Yep.
and we can help you and answer any questions you have. We're going to have our Instagram accounts posted, and so you can message us and let us know. Anyway, we're here for you. We're praying with you guys, and we love you very much.
Love you guys.